Water police left from Nelson Bay this morning, planning to widen their search for the 51-year-old from Sydney. But big seas and strong winds made the search difficult and it was later called off.
Yes, the weather conditions are certainly not what one would want to be out in the elements in.
The man, whose name hasn't been released by police, left North Arm Cove late on Saturday and was last seen west of the Karua Bridge. It's believed he was heading back towards his holiday home at the Cove. His damaged fiberglass runabout was found by an oyster farmer and is now moored near Water Police headquarters. But despite both air and water searches over the weekend, there is still no sign of the man and hopes are fading for his safe return.
There are indications of a possible drowning, yes.
Police will reassess conditions tomorrow before continuing their search.
We've had no reported sightings, and we would encourage anybody who have seen a boat, single-person boat in that particular area or anything unusual, if they could contact the police at Lower Hunter.
Brooke Webster, NBN News.
A hairdressing business is perhaps one of the last places you'd expect to find a crew member of the replica ship Endeavour, but the knotted scarf around Phil Smythe's neck is a bit of a giveaway. He was on board the 33-metre ship as watcher of the main mast when it sailed into Sydney on Saturday from New Zealand, but there was no time for a quick hair trim.
I did take my gear with me, but the conditions didn't help me to do anyone's hair.
The Endeavour was greeted by 63-knot winds and hail off Newcastle's coast. Many crew were injured while being thrown around the deck, but Phil's experience and sea legs kept him upright at all times.
On the Endeavour, or any tall ship, the motion is a little slower, but that's certainly, if you're aware of it coming, you become airborne, which encounters injuries at the end of when you stop.
He was one of only 5 Australians in the crew for the voyage, and it's not the first time he's been on board.
I'd sailed on it 5 years ago, and I reapplied. I wasn't too sure whether my age had be a bit against me, and I was accepted.
Catherine Turner, NBN News.
We would probably plant over 10,000 trees a year within Newcastle. So the tree here is to symbolise all those other trees that are being planted, and to note today being World Environment Day.
I think it's very important that we do acknowledge through education that's happened through people, the reasons and the whys and the wherefores. I just want to make comment about the fact
I'd like to welcome you all here. There's quite a collection really. There's obviously the vice.
Main use will be for structural engineering, which is testing of bolts, bricks, concrete specimens, reinforced concrete, things like that.
Most days you'll find cruise boat captain and owner Keith Jansen somewhere on Australia's largest coastal saltwater lake. Today he was proudly at the helm of the Macquarie Star, the newest addition to his fleet of 3 vessels acquired over 14 years of cruising.
Retaining the same names as like the Macquarie Lady, our first boat, our second boat, the Macquarie Enterprise, and now the Macquarie Star, which is the largest vessel on Lake Macquarie.
The $500,000 craft takes the total number of commercial pleasure boats on the lake to 5, between them carrying more than 35,000 passengers each year.
And this boat is equipped to cater for the upgrading market and the corporate work that's now starting to come into us.
And the benefits aren't just on the water.
Businesses in Lake Macquarie and more specifically Toronto can see the benefit in tourism and the tourism dollar down to the newsagent, the local florist and of course the huge bed and breakfast organisation that we have in Lake Macquarie.
Captain Keith says his new boat, licensed to carry 200 people, will take its first passengers in about a month. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
From the ground up, new houses in Lake Macquarie will have to be easy on the environment. New regulations will be in place by the end of next month and mean that new home builders will have to construct energy-efficient dwellings.
That's not only for heating and cooling of your house, it's also for your hot water heating.
The new laws are part of a nationwide strategy that's aimed at improving the environment, and the council says it's a plan that will also save home builders money in the long run.
Number one way is insulation. If you're building a new home, facing your living areas to the north, so to maximise your winter sun. Shading devices over those windows so that in summer you can minimise the heat to those areas. It's just really simple methods, just make a whole difference.
Brooke Webster, NBN News.
For some time after
the documentation and the security.
The $7 million investment was installed to make sure Pasminco meets World Health Organisation standards. At the moment, it's allowed to exceed limits at each of its community monitoring stations 30 times a year.
We put initial equipment in 1997 to meet that goal. We've been meeting that about 99% of the time, but the 1% of the time we haven't means we've had about 1,000 exceedances of that goal each year.
After being in use for 7 weeks, preliminary results show that while it's still in its commissioning phase, the tail gas scrubber, an end-of-the-line attempt to reduce sulphur dioxide emissions, is making a difference.
When you look at our 2 community monitoring stations, the one at 4th Street in Bullaroo, we've had 3 exceedances compared to 47 for April-May last year, and at Argenton we've had 1 exceedance compared to, I think it's nearly 75 from April-May last year.
And while it hasn't met the target, Pasminco says it's encouraged by the results.
The early monitoring results look really good. We've still got work to do, obviously, and we're in a sense fine-tuning the tail gas scrubber as we go along, and then our full monitoring will take effect from the 1st of July.
Brooke Webster, NBN News.
With a host of talent scouts watching on, Mussarook winger Adrian Train was on the right track early, scoring Northern's first. Another, soon after, had an 8-point lead, but missed opportunities were the real feature of the opening half, with Northern to be later haunted by them. After the break, a clever kick by Curry's Christian Berry and great work by lock Heath Jackie had the Tweed Rivers teenager over for his second. But a 12-0 lead was dragged back in a great comeback that started with Ben Dulles' pass to fullback Brett Stewart, who raced away to score. Luck continued to bounce Southern's way, with hooker Sean Byram grabbing another to get back within 2 points. The match winner was to come minutes before full time, with Stewart again in the thick of things, caught just short of the line before Matthew Gallagher made sure of it for a Southern win, 14 points to 12. To the state teams selected, and Northern has 5 players selected, including Jermaine Ale and Josh Sams, while Western is represented by Joe Wilson and Peter Taylor. Of the 20-man squad to contest the National Championships in Port Macquarie next month, Sydney dominates the squad.
Having the use of all of your limbs is something most people take for granted, but when you lose a limb, it can be devastating. The Amputee Visitor Program is there to lend a helping hand to amputees coping with the ordeal.
This program is to help amputees, both veteran and particularly new amputees, come to terms with limb loss, which is the most devastating period in our lives.
Beryl Owen is just one of these volunteers who take the time to visit other amputees. She lost one of her legs 28 years ago.
By sharing experiences, our experiences with new amputees, we can offer them strength, encouragement and hope for the future that they can get back to a relatively normal life.
91-year-old Clara Moore had part of her leg amputated about 6 weeks ago, and since then she's had regular visits from Beryl.
Beryl's my lifesaver. I see her quite often, and she comes and sees me in the hospitals, so that really it's good.
And this contact has helped her immensely.
When I see her walk, I think to myself, well, I wonder will that be me?
An afternoon tea will be held for amputees at the Rankin Park Limb Unit tomorrow. Tanya Carlisle, NBN News.
Neighbours heard the shot in Stirling Street, Rathmines at about 10 to 10 last night. They hoped it was nothing.
We were just sitting here watching the television and I heard a bang and my husband thought it was firecrackers. So we just dismissed it, and then a little while later we heard screaming, someone had been shot, get an ambulance.
Daniel Ryan was the victim. Just 18, he was with friends in a garage at 14 Stirling Street when he was shot in the stomach with a .357 Magnum like the one shown here. Witnesses say he staggered into the house at that address before he was taken by car to Toronto Ambulance Station. Daniel was treated there but died on the way to John Hunter Hospital. Neighbours say there was a violent argument in front of the garage involving 3 people early in the evening, but the whole street is shocked by what unfolded.
Just a waste of a life. You know, he hasn't even begun to live. Yeah, very innocent, sad death.
After the shooting, the man charged with firing the gun approached a house at the other end of the street and told a resident to call the police, saying someone had been shot. When officers arrived with guns drawn, they found Stephen Edward Sari waiting quietly for them. He was taken to Toronto Police Station. 15 witnesses were also interviewed there. Stephen Edward Sari walked into the court, sat down in the dock and wasn't required to say a word. No application for bail was made and he'll next appear in front of Newcastle Local Court on July the 25th. David McElwain, NBN News.
The Matildas went into the game desperate for a win and it showed. Their early pressure paid off with Sharon Black nailing her first. New Zealand wasn't without its chances, most of them coming from set plays. But it was more desperate work again from the Matildas' Sharon Black, who bagged her second. On a roll and with New Zealand's defence in tatters, a magic moment for Newcastle's Sonny Hughes, lobbing an out-of-position keeper in spectacular fashion and in front of a home crowd. On the half-hour mark, Sharon Black found the back of the net for the third time, putting the Matildas up 4-0. The frustration got to Kiwi captain Wendy Henderson, who earned a yellow card. New Zealand tightened up in a scoreless second half, characterised by some great saves from both keepers. The match finished 4-0 to the Matildas. They'll meet the USA at Breakers Stadium on Sunday. Blake Doyle, NBN News. As Nova Peris Kneebone was carrying the flame at the start of its Australian journey, an Olympic cauldron was being unveiled in Newcastle. The cauldron is one of 187 in Australia being installed in cities and towns along the relay route.
It'll leave a legacy of the Newcastle's involvement in the Sydney 2000 Olympic Games.
On hand at the launch, Newcastle's own Olympic softballer Natalie Ward, just 100 days out from her second Games.
As an athlete, we're certainly going to be doing the most to make this country proud.
The torch will arrive from the north into Newcastle, where it will stay overnight. From Newcastle it'll go to Spears Point, to the Central Coast, to Cessnock and Maitland, then through the Upper Hunter. It all starts on the 27th of August, which also happens to be NRL Grand Final Day. Torch relay organisers are hoping the two don't clash if Newcastle makes the big game.
Certainly hoping the Knights make the grand final. It'll be a very interesting one to balance, but the 27th of August when the torch arrives, which is grand final day, so we'll have a very interesting competition between the torch and the grand final.
Blake Doyle, NBN News. Access Industries workers were cleaning paint hoses with thinners in the Hamilton workshop when there was an explosion.
We're only speculating, but it may have been an electrostatic discharge into the spray lines.
The fire quickly took hold. Fire crews from 4 stations were on the scene and contained the blaze within minutes. Around 40 workers were in the building when the explosion occurred. They were quickly ushered out, having gone through a fire drill just weeks earlier. Some were confused, others had to be consoled.
All the occupants have got out safely, and we're very thankful that their evacuation procedures have gone as they were planned.
The fire damaged around a third of the building. It's unclear how the fire will affect Access Industries' future operations. Blake Doyle, NBN News.
Well, all those people who jumped on the bandwagon for the third state of origin to be called off if it's a dead rubber will now realise that the third game is nearly always the best, despite whether the series is already wrapped up or not. It was an historic, record-breaking match for the Blues, which justified the third game should always be there. Queensland certainly will be hurting and will already be looking to next year, but one thing that they must look at is that in the last 20 years, New South Wales have always predominantly had the best team on paper. It was just that competitive spirit and hatred that the Maroons carried into the game which made the difference. Next year, nothing will change. New South Wales will have the better team. It'll just depend on whether Queensland can get that raw passion back, that Queenslander call that made them so dominant in the past. Now to the plays of the week, and Clinton O'Brien gave an early welcome to the Brisbane Broncos last weekend, and Broncos rookie Carl Webb got 3 weeks for this tackle on Paul Rahihi, while Scott Logan was amongst a few players who earned 2 weeks for their troubles for head-eye tackles last weekend. Tips for round 19, and it seems like every week it's getting harder to predict. West Tigers take on the Dragons, and the deciding factor will be whether the Dragons have really turned the corner after last week's victory. West beat them back in round 6, and the Dragons have lost 6 from 8 away. I've tipped the Tigers. Penrith, Broncos, Roosters and the Knights to win their games, while in other close matches, the Northern Eagles and Parramatta, the Eagles have won 3 from 4 at Brookvale. I've tipped them. And the Bulldogs v the Sharks, the Dogs to win at home. I'll see you next week. Back to you, Rabs.
The early signs looked ominous for Japan, the USA on the attack but unable to convert pressure into points, the woodwork not helping things on one occasion. But from a set play, the USA had all the moves, with Brandy Chaston passing inside for Cindy Parlow, and it was 1-0. Japan's answer was as swift as it was superb, with Yumi Obi firing a 35-metre shot that surprised keeper Jen Brenham, shocked the crowd and sent the Japanese team into celebrations. But there was still plenty of football to come. After half-time, the USA stepped up its assault, Shannon McMillan pouncing on a half chance to land the USA a 2-1 lead. There was nothing chancy about this goal. Brenda Chaston's free kick dead on target as the world champs showed their class. Another goal just before full-time to Ali Wagner ended it at 4-1. Earlier in the night, Canada scored an incredible victory against world number 2 China. Forced into a penalty shootout after remaining 2-2 after extra time, the Canadians got the break early when Nicole Wright saved Japan's first attempt. The two continued to exchange goals before China thought it got back on level terms after a save, but the referee gave the Canadians another shot from the spot in controversial circumstances, and Isabel Harvey made no mistake the second time around. There are 2 more games tomorrow while Australia play USA on Sunday.
Melissa Wilson is the epitome of determination. A car accident 8 years ago left her with brain damage, but she's turned tragedy into triumph. Having started swimming as part of her rehabilitation process, Melissa is now one of the world's best S4 swimmers. At the recent European Championships, she won 4 golds, 5 silvers and 1 bronze medal. The 19-year-old also qualified for a 5th Paralympic event, the 150-metre medley, shaving 4 seconds off her personal best and becoming the world number 2.
It'll be the first Paralympics that I've been to, so yeah. It'll be really wonderful, and competing in front of the home country will be awesome.
Melissa will also compete in the 50 metres backstroke and the 50, 100 and 200 freestyle events.
My goal is to win a medal in the 50 backstroke and the 150 medley, and I hope to do really well in the other swims.
Yeah, she is a definite medal chance. I don't think she needs to make huge improvements to get herself to within medal contention.
For Melissa, becoming a champion swimmer has been nothing but hard work.
Oh yes, hey, Peter here trained me real hard.
Kylie Colvin, NBN News.
Justin Lee has won this event twice, in 1994 and 1998, but his chance for a third win went in the semi-final when his leg rope broke. He tried desperately to make up for lost time but couldn't catch the likes of Andy Brinkworth and Paul Parks. Parks winning the semi, with Brinkworth also reaching the decider, but the title went to current Newcastle Open champ Stu McCall on a countback for the second successive year. To Speedway, and the last event for the Newcastle season is in action tonight at Tomago. Heats for the National East Coast Classic AmCar title and the Street Stockers were run last night with finals action highlighting tonight's meeting. Warm hands of welcome on a cold day at Breakers Stadium as Australia lined up against the world champions and a side it had never beaten. Despite the rain, the way America started indicated the drought wasn't going to break today. Goalie Tracy Wheeler kept the USA at bay once and then twice, with a touch to the bar denying the Americans again and left the world champs wondering what they had to do. Sharon Black had the Matildas' best opportunity in the second half, but couldn't sneak it past the US. This game was to be decided on a penalty after hometown girl Cheryl Salisbury was fouled for an accidental handball in the penalty area. Shannon McMillan took the shot from the spot. The USA 1-0 winners, equalling Australia's best ever result against them, but enough for the world champs to win the Pacific Cup. Recovering from 2 games in the space of 5 days, Andrew Johns had every right to be sore, but it was the loss that ached the most.
To be in it for so long and lose it, it hurts a bit.
But he was happy with his brother Matthew's decision to head over to England and play out his career with Wigan. Just what the halfback will do, though, still isn't known.
I'm sure he'll be successful and hopefully come back here and maybe coach or be some role in the club, and I'm still playing if I stay here.
Given his representative commitments and the speculation on his future, Andrew is just keen to give his brother the perfect farewell.
It's been pretty stressful, and I've really started to feel the pressure, but I suppose the way I could repay him is really knuckle down and really hit form coming into the semis and give him a premiership to leave with.
Prop Josh Perry left Bruce Stadium last night shouldering other problems, but the teenager doesn't think he'll miss any football. Winger Lenny Beckett has seen plenty of that in recent weeks, and last night picked up 2 tries for his trouble. With Darren Albert still some time off a return, Beckett keeps making the most of it.
Yeah, it's my job. I just got to be ready to make sure, take the opportunities and just enjoy the time that I got up there.
Meanwhile, props Matt Parsons and Glenn Greig for good chances to make returns this week from respective knee injuries.
Mary Penny says the sea is her passion. So in 1983, when the Coastal Patrol started, it seemed only logical that her and her husband join. And now she hopes her years of service will lead the way for others. Also on the water, 3 years ago, Kevin Buxton's sailing career started moving in new directions. A one-off class for people with disabilities has become Australia's biggest sailability program.
After 5 or 10 minutes, with me with tears running down my eyes and a lump in my throat, telling them how to sail a boat, it worked. And from there on, it's just exploded and grown.
His work has been recognised with the Order of Australia Medal. After 33 years in the police force, Superintendent Sam Findlay has received the Australian Police Medal. The local area commander says he's shocked but thrilled by the honour.
I'd like to think it's recognition of what the police in general do, and we do see some terrible things, and it's a fairly stressful job. And to think that the community recognises the work that we do in this way is absolutely great.
And Daryl Marshall's Emergency Services Medal is a just reward for his 21 years with the State Emergency Service.
Yeah, I think it's probably part of the reward, but it's something you don't go looking for. I mean, there's thousands of people out there that I've worked with over the period of time. I think they all have a share in this.
The Lake Macquarie controller has been part of rescue work after the Newcastle earthquake, the Thredbo disaster in Kosovo. Another 14 people have also been recognised as part of the Queen's Birthday honour list. Brooke Webster, NBN News.
Newcastle's West End has been in economic decline in recent years. City Council says it's found the answer. Last night, Council voted overwhelmingly in favour of an application for a major development at the old gasworks site bordered by King, Parry and Steele Streets. The $25 million Gateway Plaza will comprise a Woolworths supermarket housed beneath twin 8-storey towers, 117 units up for sale to be priced in the mid-range.
I think these will be in a position in the market where they'll be very affordable, and also the location is very good because it means it's close to good traffic routes. It's also close to the rail.
The Mayor says the city centre is experiencing a boom in property development with around 1,000 units on the way, and already there's strong interest being shown in the Gateway Plaza. More than 200 jobs will be created in the construction stage, and the long-term financial benefits are expected to be good news for the area.
117 units, you'd have to double that at least for the population who's going to live there, and then the spin-off to small business in that regard is going to be very high.
A study examining the site's contamination from old gasometers must be completed before a starting date can be determined. Catherine Turner, NBN News.